Have you ever wondered why simply being yourself is enough to provoke someone's hostility? You didn't insult them, you didn't compete, you didn't even raise your voice, yet somehow your calm unsettled them. Your peace revealed the chaos they try so hard to hide. Your confidence reminded them of the parts of themselves they abandoned long ago, and your quiet growth became a mirror they couldn't stand to look into. The truth is, people don't always target you because of what you've done. Often, it's because your presence shines a light on their insecurities. They can't destroy you, so they try to disturb you. They want to shake your silence, break your focus, and rattle your clarity, because only then do they feel powerful again. But here's what they never expect. You don't need to argue, explain, or stoop to their level. In silence lies a strategy more powerful than any confrontation. Stay with me, and together we'll explore how to outsmart them quietly and protect your peace. 1. The hidden trigger of calm. Have you ever noticed how the smallest remark can pierce you deeper than an outright insult? A backhanded compliment, a sarcastic whisper when you're not looking, or the sudden chill of a cold shoulder. These moments arrive when you least expect them, usually when you're finally doing well, and the question rises inside you, what did I do wrong? The answer, though, is liberating. You did nothing wrong at all. You simply showed up as yourself. What you see as normal confidence, they see as a reminder of their inadequacy. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." In their case, it is their imagination of who you are compared to who they failed to become that feeds the hostility. Their attacks are not rooted in your actions, but in their unhealed wounds, their unresolved shame, and their fear of being left behind. When a person carries heavy shadows within, they search for a mirror to project them onto, and the mirror is often the one who has done the inner work, the one who carries quiet confidence without demanding attention, the one whose self-worth does not beg for validation. To such people, your calm is not calm at all. It is a threat. You embody the life they abandoned, the courage they never summoned, the progress they secretly long for. They see you not just as a person, but as a reminder of everything they gave up on. That's why the one who feels weak accuses others of arrogance. The one who feels like a failure resents those who succeed. The one who has lost control seeks to control others. They look at you and their inner voice cries, "How dare they feel peaceful while I am still at war with myself?" Instead of healing their chaos, they try to disturb yours. Picture this in a simple setting, a team meeting. You speak calmly, share an idea, and others notice. You weren't showing off, you were simply competent, yet suddenly one colleague begins to undermine you. They interrupt, roll their eyes, or make subtle jokes at your expense. Why? Because your calm presence, your unshaken voice, threatened the insecurity they worked hard to hide. They don't truly hate you, they hate the way you don't need their approval to feel valuable. For someone who survives only on external validation, your self-assurance feels like a blade cutting through their illusions. They don't long for your downfall, they long for your disruption. If they can provoke you into anger, they feel alive again. If they can make you question yourself, they regain a false sense of power. Ironically, your emotional intelligence, the very strength that allows you to stay grounded, can make you a perfect target. Because you are empathetic, you try to understand. Because you assume the best, you give second chances. Yet, emotional intelligence without boundaries is a magnet for manipulators. They mistake kindness for weakness and silence for surrender. They assume that because you don't retaliate, you don't see. But Stoic wisdom reminds us otherwise. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And this is your first move: to see without reacting, to observe with clarity, not to meet their chaos with more chaos. When someone targets you, it is not a sign of your weakness. It is evidence that you've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer blends into mediocrity. They attack what they cannot access. They belittle what they secretly admire. They disrupt what they do not understand. Your task is not to retaliate, but to rise in silence. So the next time you feel the sting of a sudden attack, pause. Do not react. Remind yourself, this is their reflection, not mine. Once you see the game clearly, you no longer have to play it. And in choosing not to play, you win a deeper kind of power, because here is the hidden truth. The moment you stop questioning what you did wrong and start recognizing their insecurity for what it is, you shift from being their target to becoming untouchable. And that understanding is the first step toward mastering the quiet art of outsmarting those who try to shake you. In the next part, we'll explore the unspoken ways. Your very presence can stir insecurity, and how that quiet energy, if guarded well, can become the strongest shield you'll ever carry. 2. The power of silent presence. Have you ever felt the tension of walking into a room and realizing that without saying a single word, someone has already decided they don't like you? Not because of anything you've done, but because of how they feel about themselves in your presence. That unease you sense in their glance, that discomfort in their tone, it isn't about you. It's about the mirror you've become, a reflection they can't escape. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone despises me, that's their concern. My only concern is not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt." And here lies the paradox. Your silence, your stillness, your refusal to shrink unsettles those who depend on noise to feel real. The truth is, most people are not searching for inspiration. They are searching for comfort, even if that comfort rests on lies they tell themselves. So when you enter with clarity, self-respect, and no hunger for approval, you don't inspire them, you expose them. Your presence refuses to validate their excuses, and it reminds them of a potential they abandoned long ago. For those who have built their sense of worth on fragile foundations, that reminder stings. Emotional instability finds peace threatening. Your calmness in the storm, your choice of patience over pettiness, your ability to listen without rushing to interrupt, all of it reveals the frantic lack of control in those who survive on chaos. They cannot manipulate you, they cannot provoke you. And because their tactics fail, their insecurity begins to turn into hostility. Imagine a simple gathering of friends. One person dominates the conversation, always reaching for the spotlight, demanding validation. Then you arrive. You don't need attention, and you don't compete for it. You listen, you speak rarely, but when you do, your words carry weight. You don't perform, you simply exist with quiet confidence. Suddenly their dominance looks shallow, and the audience they once controlled sees the contrast. They may laugh and say, "Why are you so quiet? Why are you so serious? Loosen up." But what they truly mean is, "You're making me feel exposed just by being composed." Their unspoken thought is clear: if you don't shrink, I can't feel tall. And so, they try to disrupt your rhythm, not because you've wronged them, but because your very presence reveals what they lack. This is the strange power of calm. Your refusal to react unsettles them because it strips away the illusion of control they once held. When someone depends on validation to feel alive, your refusal to give them either praise or reaction feels like you've erased them. To withhold acknowledgement is to render them invisible. That's why your silence rattles them more than your words ever could. Your energy becomes a form of resistance, and your restraint a kind of rebellion. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." By refusing to react, you turn their attempts to provoke into their own frustration. So the irony is this: you don't have to fight, defend, or even respond. The most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not out of apathy, but out of mastery. For when you withhold reaction, you protect your peace. And to those who live in constant chaos, that peace is unbearable. They cannot control someone who doesn't play the game. They cannot win against someone who isn't competing. And they cannot diminish someone who refuses to measure their worth by others' approval. Remember this the next time someone tries to poke, provoke, or pull you off balance. Your calm is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. It is a declaration of power. It says clearly, "I see you, I understand you, and yet you will never have access to my peace." This is the essence of Stoic strength, to remain centered no matter the storm around you. And in that strength lies the unshakable freedom they cannot touch. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into the tactics people use to test your boundaries, the subtle games designed to make you stumble, and how to stay one step ahead with quiet but unbreakable precision. 3. The Games of Insecurity. Have you ever noticed how, the moment someone realizes they cannot shake you with their presence alone, they begin to reach for tricks instead of truth? They escalate not with reason, but with manipulation. They press buttons, set traps, and create friction, not to destroy your life, but to disturb your peace. Because that's where your power truly lives, in the quiet place inside you that refuses to be moved. Insecure people cannot stand emotional neutrality. Your calm feels like a mirror they can't escape, so they poke and prod, hoping to draw anger, defensiveness, or doubt. They believe that if they can get a reaction, they still matter. Seneca once said, "A man is as great as the things he lets bother him." Remember this when they test you, because every move they make is designed for one thing: to drag you into a game you never agreed to play. Their tactics are many, but the root is always the same. They begin with passive-aggressive provocations, speaking in sarcasm or backhanded compliments. "Oh, look who thinks they're too good for us now. Must be nice to live in your perfect little bubble." What they are truly saying is, "Your presence makes me feel small, and I need to pull you down to feel level again." Whole people don't bruise others. Only fractured souls need to wound. If you answer them, you step into their game. If you stay silent, you expose their weakness. Another common tactic is guilt tripping disguised as care. They'll say, "You've changed. You're not as fun anymore. We miss the old you." But what they really miss is the version of you they could control. Growth is not betrayal. You don't owe the comfort of your smaller self to those unwilling to evolve. And then there are the public tests. They try to provoke you in front of others, not to reveal truth, but to control the narrative. They laugh at you in groups, question you loudly to discredit your voice, or bring up old failures to trigger shame. The hope is that you'll snap, that you'll perform for their dysfunction, because the moment you react, they win. You become the irrational one, and they rewrite the story. But when you hold your frame, when you refuse to perform, their chaos crumbles. For nothing exposes desperation more than calm indifference in the face of provocation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It is not about silencing them, it is about refusing to let them dictate your inner world. Consider a simple scene at work. A colleague undermines you in meetings, cutting across your words, questioning your competence. The old you might have clapped back, raising your voice, desperate to prove your worth. But the Stoic response is different. You let them talk. You stay steady. You deliver your value without rushing. Slowly, the contrast becomes visible to everyone, their noise against your clarity, their drama against your results. You win without raising your tone, without matching their disorder. And in that moment, without even trying, you reposition yourself as the stronger force. That is how the Stoic wins, not with louder noise, but with impenetrable calm. Here is the anchor. People will test your emotional control again and again, but only until they realize it cannot be broken. Then they move on, not because they've changed, but because you've shown them they no longer matter. They were never searching for resolution. They only ever wanted reaction. And when you refuse to give it, you don't just win, you end the game entirely. In the next chapter, we'll uncover why emotional boundaries are not walls of isolation, but shields of wisdom, and how setting them firmly can transform the way others treat you and the way you see yourself. 4. Silent resistance as mastery. Have you ever stood in the middle of an argument and realized that the most powerful thing you could do was nothing at all? There is a kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't argue, doesn't plead for understanding. It simply holds the line. That strength is silent resistance, and when mastered, it disrupts more than any confrontation ever could. The world often mistakes silence for weakness, but in truth, it is one of the purest forms of mastery. People expect you to react because that's what they would do. They expect you to defend, to explain, to return fire. Yet, when you remain still, when you refuse to flinch or lower yourself into the chaos, you interrupt the cycle and disarm their manipulation. Your silence becomes a message more eloquent than words. I see you, I understand you, and I still choose peace over performance. Why is this so powerful? Because people who thrive on control survive by feeding off your reactions. The moment you remove that food, they panic. When you don't react, they lose leverage. When you don't justify, they lose control of the story. When you don't descend to their level, their chaos echoes back at them in the emptiness of your restraint. This is why silence isn't avoidance. It is strategy. It is dominance without noise. Seneca reminded us, it is better to conquer grief than to deceive it. The same is true of conflict. Better to conquer it through mastery than to deceive yourself into thinking you win by shouting louder. Think of a simple moment from daily life. Someone insults you, waiting eagerly for the spark in your eyes, the sharpness in your tone. But instead, you meet their glare calmly, say nothing, and walk away. Watch what happens. They grow louder, more desperate, because you didn't play the role they wrote for you. You didn't feed their ego. You didn't validate their dysfunction. You left them with nothing but their own reflection. And for the insecure, that is the scariest mirror to face. In Stoic philosophy, silence is not cowardice. It is clarity in motion. You don't choose stillness because you are weak, but because you have already made the decision. This is not worthy of my energy. That is the essence of discipline, the ability to remain true to your values even when your ego begs for release. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your thoughts are rooted in calm, your silence becomes radiant, unshakable, commanding. To look chaos in the eye and still choose peace, that is quiet confidence, the kind that rattles louder than any scream. And so silence builds a boundary. It tells the world where your energy begins and ends. It protects your peace without needing to announce it. This is why those who try to provoke you find themselves defeated by their own noise. They expected a fight, but what they received was something far more dangerous: your refusal to engage. That is the deepest form of strength, not winning against them, but mastering yourself. So the next time someone tests your composure, let your silence become the sharpest answer. And if this message resonates, write silence in the comments. Let it be your quiet affirmation. Remember, choosing stillness is not about being passive. It's about being powerful enough not to be moved. Subscribe if you wish to keep learning how to hold that power in a world addicted to noise. In the next part, we'll uncover how your boundaries, once guarded in silence, transform not just how others treat you, but how you carry yourself into every battle of life. 5. Stop explaining yourself. Have you ever felt the exhaustion that comes from explaining yourself over and over, only to realize the person you're speaking to was never truly listening? There is something sacred about refusing to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. It draws a line, it protects your peace, and it reclaims the time and energy that should belong only to you. Every time you try to justify yourself to someone who has already decided to twist your words, you cheapen your own truth. Silence, in this sense, is not an absence of words, but the presence of standards. It says clearly, I do not owe clarity to those who profit from confusion. I do not fight to be seen by those committed to blindness. This is not arrogance, it is self-respect. The enemy of peace does not know what to do with silence. When you speak, they can distort your words. When you fight, they can provoke you further. But when you say nothing, they are forced to confront themselves. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the discomfort they tried to place on you. And for many, that is unbearable. Your silence does not mean you didn't notice their attack. It means you are no longer available for the game. Epictetus once wrote, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. By refusing to explain, by refusing to give them the reaction they seek, you are no longer mastered." There is a vital difference between shutting down and shutting the door. Shutting down is an act of fear, while shutting the door is an act of preservation. When you walk away with dignity, you are not abandoning the battle, you are refusing to fight it on their terms. In doing so, you win a deeper war. The war to guard your inner peace. This is the Stoic shift, from reacting impulsively to withdrawing strategically. You don't need to be louder, you need to be clearer in your silence. You don't need to win their argument, you need to win your freedom. Think of the times when people accused you of changing. You're not as fun anymore, you're too distant, you're not the same. What they truly mean is, you're no longer easy to control. They miss the version of you that lived small so they could feel tall. But growth is not betrayal. You do not owe the comfort of your old self to those who refuse to evolve. Let them believe you're cold. Let them invent their stories. You do not need to defend your progress to those who stopped moving. Detachment, too, is often misunderstood. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop participating in your own disturbance. It is the refusal to keep feeding your energy to things that drain your soul. And in that refusal lies your strategy. Some people are not looking for resolution, they are looking for reaction. They don't want peace, they want chaos shared. They want you to drown beside them so they no longer feel alone in their suffering. But the Stoic path is different. You don't jump into their ocean, you build your own shore. The goal is not to win the fight, it is to leave the arena entirely. You do not defeat the manipulator by outplaying them, you defeat them by refusing to play. Seneca captured this wisdom long ago. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. In your delay, in your silence, in your strategic detachment, you starve the drama and preserve your dignity. Let this truth settle deeply. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be faithful to yourself. And in the quiet of that fidelity, you find a power that noise could never grant you. In the next chapter, we will explore how building unshakable inner boundaries turns this silence into a lasting shield, one that no chaos can penetrate. 6. Detachment as quiet rebellion. Have you ever noticed how every toxic interaction feels like an invisible contract? One side provokes, the other responds. The louder and more emotional the response, the more control the provoker feels. But the moment you withdraw, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, you rip that contract in half. They can scream into the void, slander you behind closed doors, or twist the narrative to suit themselves. But without your participation, their story has no oxygen. That is how you outsmart them, not by fighting harder, but by feeding less. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Detachment then becomes an act of quiet rebellion. This kind of detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's not about shutting people out, but about becoming selectively accessible. You decide who earns the privilege of your energy, who gets access to your emotions, and who no longer deserves your attention. You don't block someone to be petty, you block them because your peace is sacred. You don't go silent out of immaturity, you go silent because you've grown beyond pointless conversations. That's emotional intelligence in action, the art of protecting your focus from emotional parasites. Imagine a friend or colleague who constantly criticizes you, not to help you grow, but to slowly erode your confidence. They smile while delivering the jab, calling it honesty. You could plead with them, try to explain, ask them to stop. But true power looks different. You stop engaging. You limit your presence. You build your life without them in the center. And soon enough, they feel it. The energetic door has closed. For the manipulator, nothing is more terrifying than realizing they've lost access. Detachment is also discipline at the highest level. People often think it's emotional, but in truth, it's practical. Every moment you spend in drama or overthinking is a moment stolen from your growth. Detachment means choosing alignment over attention, and paradoxically, the more detached you become, the more magnetic you appear. People are drawn to those who don't need them and respect those who no longer explain themselves. This is what the Stoics called being untouchable in spirit, not by becoming stone, but by mastering self. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Detachment is that bravery, the courage to protect your freedom. Think of it as building a fortress. Inner peace is not something you stumble upon. It is constructed brick by brick, guarded fiercely. Like any fortress, it requires walls, gates, and rituals. The first wall is unshakable boundaries, not boundaries you announce, but boundaries you live. You don't reply to every message, don't explain every choice, don't attend every argument you're invited to. Access to your time and energy is a privilege, never a right. The second wall is mastering your triggers. You cannot control others, but you can choose your response. To feel everything, yet respond to almost nothing, that is strength. The third wall is guarding your energy. Not every problem deserves your hand. Not every crisis is your battle. Energy is currency, and you cannot allow emotional thieves to rob you blind. The fourth wall is the discipline of speaking less and observing more. The less you reveal, the harder it is for others to manipulate. Silence becomes a shield, stillness a weapon. The fifth wall is ritual stillness, moments of quiet in the morning before the world intrudes, or in the evening before sleep takes you. These pauses reset the fortress. And finally, the sixth wall is access control. You can love people and still limit their entry into your inner world. Give trust based on actions, not words. Offer access based on alignment, not history. Because your peace is a vault, and not everyone deserves the code. If you feel constantly drained, it is not because you are weak, but because your gates have been left open too long. Now is the time to build, brick by brick, standard by standard. Detachment is not rejection, it is redirection back to yourself. It is the choice to stop drowning in another's ocean and begin shaping your own shore. And as you reinforce this fortress with silence, boundaries, and discipline, you no longer just protect your peace, you begin to live fully inside it. In the next part, we will explore how this inner fortress changes not only how others treat you, but how you walk through the world with unshakable clarity. 7. Outgrowing the cycle. There comes a point when the question shifts. You stop asking, why are they doing this to me? And you begin to ask, why am I still watching? Because their chaos is not your concern. Their dysfunction is not your responsibility. Their noise is not meant to become the rhythm of your life. The moment you stop chasing understanding and begin chasing your purpose, the air clears. What once felt personal is revealed as nothing more than distraction. You were never meant to fix them. You were meant to outgrow the cycle entirely, but the pattern repeats itself. They hurl insults, create drama, weave guilt into every interaction, hoping you'll drop your progress to respond. Why? Because your growth threatens their stagnation. They can't keep up, so they attempt to drag you back. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive. Your privilege is to use that day to build, while they waste theirs trying to interrupt. Their failure to move forward becomes unbearable in the shadow of your focus. Consider this: you've committed yourself to health, to a project, or to healing. While you quietly labor, someone resurfaces with old accusations, sly remarks, or baiting questions. The old version of you might have paused to defend yourself, but now you no longer waste breath. You let them talk while you keep working. You let them gossip while you keep growing. They remain frozen in the same patterns while you craft a life beyond their reach. That contrast alone unsettles them more than any argument ever could. And here lies the trap, wanting to be understood. It feels human, even noble, but it delays your destiny. To explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you is to abandon the path for the sake of their comfort. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Their craving for reaction reveals their poverty of spirit. Your refusal to provide it reveals your strength. So let the storm rage outside your walls. Your task is not to calm the storm, it is to remain steady within. Don't retaliate, don't return to a battlefield you already walked away from. Instead, refine your craft, sharpen your body, deepen your vision, build the fortress within, brick by brick, until their noise becomes nothing more than a faint echo outside. True inner power is found in prioritization. You cannot be powerful and distracted, cannot rise while arguing, cannot grow while explaining. And when you finally stop reacting, when your silence becomes steady, they begin to crumble. At first, they pretend indifference. Then they escalate with subtle provocations, fake kindness, or reminders of old patterns. But nothing lands, nothing moves you. The person they once played no longer exists. The mirror flips. You no longer reflect insecurity, you reflect indifference, peace, and quiet strength. They see it, and it unsettles them. Because if you no longer need them, if you no longer react, then their greatest fear becomes true. They never had power. They only had proximity. And now they have neither. That is when your growth becomes their undoing, and your silence becomes their loudest lesson. 8. Stoic revenge, becoming untouchable. What if the most powerful revenge required no noise, no confrontation, no audience? Imagine a kind of revenge that speaks only through your evolution, where every step forward is a quiet verdict against those who tried to break you. This is what the Stoics understood. True revenge is not fueled by hate, but by rising so far above the battlefield that your very existence becomes a reminder of their failure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And that is the essence of Stoic revenge. You don't mirror their chaos. You don't become their bitterness. You grow into someone they never imagined you could be. Think of the times you were betrayed, mocked, or discarded. The old you may have chased explanations, sought to expose them, begged to be understood. But the new you stays silent, works relentlessly, sharpens habits, and builds a life beyond their reach. They expected your collapse. Instead, they are forced to watch your transformation. They hoped you'd remain stuck in loops of reaction, yet you broke free. Every time you choose discipline over despair, calm over chaos, action over argument, you practice Stoic revenge. And the most devastating part for them? You are no longer playing. They cannot bend what no longer bends toward them. Your life itself becomes the mirror they cannot escape. Where once they thrived on your reactions, now they're left with nothing but their own reflection, and it burns. Their true loss was not in the moment they hurt you, but in the moment you rose and healed beyond them. This is the final form of strength. Untouchable not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown aware of your worth, your focus, your purpose. In that awareness, you are immune to manipulation, beyond the reach of petty games. True Stoic power is not about force, but restraint. Not about domination, but self-mastery. And in that mastery, you discover the quietest and most unshakable revenge of all. You didn't just survive, you became untouchable. From merely surviving to truly rising, you no longer live at the mercy of chaos. You've been tested, targeted, misunderstood, yet each time you grew steadier, quieter, untouchable. Not by fighting louder, but by mastering your own peace. That is the move they can never undo. Tell me in the comments with 2 words, quiet power. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. Stay calm, stay steady, your next level awaits.